Welcome to Mindful Moments. It's like a protein bar for your brain, you know? Ever think about how power really works? Not the obvious stuff, but how it subtly shapes decisions, even destinies.
Yeah.
That's what's so fascinating about Robert Caro's book, Master of the Senate.
Oh, yeah, the Pulitzer Prize-winning one.
Exactly. It's
So,
about Lyndon B. Johnson's rise to power.
not just a biography, is it?
No, more like a masterclass.
A masterclass in ambition
Strategy,
and really understanding human nature.
turning a seemingly ordinary senator into a force to be reckoned with.
What gets me is how Caro uses primary sources.
Interviews and the like.
Yeah, private letters, archival documents, the whole 9 yards.
To really paint that vivid picture.
Of the Senate in the mid-20th century.
Yeah, it was a whole different world back then.
Seniority was everything.
And you know what else? Southern senators held so much power.
They were masters of the rules, the procedures.
It's almost unimaginable today.
They had a level of power,
Right.
almost unheard of now.
And the filibuster, we hear about it today.
Yeah.
But back then,
It was a weapon.
a weapon used precisely, especially against civil rights.
Any advancement, forget it.
So how did Johnson, a freshman senator,
No real clout.
right, how did he navigate this system?
That's where it gets interesting.
Johnson's genius.
And, well, ruthlessness, too, let's be honest.
Caro doesn't shy away from that.
No, he paints him as this larger-than-life figure.
Physically imposing, right?
Yeah, legendary work ethic.
But it was more than that
So much more. He understood people,
on a deep level.
their motivations, weaknesses, secrets.
It's like he could see right through them.
It's almost eerie, the way Caro describes it.
It's like that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah, but with Johnson,
It was both,
he knew the importance of relationships.
but he wasn't afraid to use them.
Absolutely. One of the most fascinating parts of the book.
Tell me about it.
Johnson's relationship with Richard Russell.
Oh, another powerful Southern senator.
Exactly. Russell was like a mentor to him.
And Russell himself was.
A master strategist.
Caro calls him the South's greatest general since Robert E. Lee.
And there was Johnson, learning from him.
Talk about mentorship.
Right. Access to the inner circles of power.
Wow. But Johnson wasn't just sitting there absorbing wisdom.
Oh, no, he was actively building his own power base.
Using what he learned, I bet.
You got it. He was a master networker.
Placing allies on key committees.
Even if they were junior. He understood favors, reciprocity.
It could be charming, right?
Incredibly so.
But then turn on the pressure,
Like a switch.
and if you crossed him,
Not a good idea. He'd use his influence.
reward loyalty.
And punish disloyalty.
It's almost Shakespearean.
Right.
Charm, manipulation, sheer force of will.
Makes you think about power itself.
How much is strategy? How much is personality?
Johnson is this paradox. Idealistic, ruthless, both at once.
He wanted to make a difference.
Genuinely.
But he was obsessed with power, too.
And how to get it.
It wasn't just about personal gain, was it?
No, he had legislative victories too.
Real accomplishments.
And this is where his understanding of Eisenhower comes in.
A Republican president.
The very popular.
A Democrat supporting a Republican.
That was Johnson's masterstroke.
Seems counterintuitive.
But it was calculated.
So instead of obstructing Eisenhower
He supported him.
on key issues, bold move.
It was a risk, but it paid off.
How so?
By aligning with Eisenhower, Johnson made the Democrats look good.
The party of unity, responsibility.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
neutralized the Republicans.
And it helped Johnson within the Senate.
Consolidated his power. A win-win.
So he's mastering the Senate, building relationships, playing the long game,
He was always thinking ahead.
like a chess player.
Always looking for an advantage.
But all that power.
It came at a cost.
Yeah, we forget about the human side of things.
Right. The sacrifices.
What about Johnson himself?
His health suffered. Major heart attack in 55.
Wow.
All that pressure. And Lady Bird, his wife.
Incredibly supportive, I've heard.
She was. Adapted her life to his ambition. Put her own needs aside.
Power is a double-edged sword.
It really is.
And this is just the beginning of the story.
We've only scratched the surface.
Johnson's methods, his relationships.
It's a complex web.
So we were talking about Johnson's ambition and the personal cost.
Yeah, the sacrifices.
But this wasn't the only story, was it?
No, not at all.
There's this whole other chapter, almost a dark side, I'd say.
Right, the story of Leland Olds.
This is where things get interesting.
And controversial, for sure.
So set the stage for us. Who was Leland Olds?
Well, picture this. The Cold War is heating up.
Anti-communist sentiment everywhere.
You said it. And this climate of fear, it plays a big role.
In Johnson's strategy, you're saying?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so back to Olds. What's his deal?
Olds was this New Deal liberal.
Okay, I'm following.
Chairman of the Federal Power Commission, a champion for public power.
But
There's always a but, right?
seems like it was Johnson.
It was Old's past.
His past. What about it?
Well, earlier in his career, he'd been involved with socialist publications.
Socialists. Uh-oh.
Yeah, he wrote articles advocating ideas that, well, let's just say in the context of the Cold War.
Not a good look.
You could say that again. Easily branded as communist.
Or at least sympathetic to the Soviets.
Right. Now, to be fair, his views had moderated by the time he was appointed to the FPC.
He wasn't calling for full-blown government ownership anymore.
No, more like government regulation of industry.
But perception is everything in politics, isn't it?
You hit the nail on the head. And Johnson, he saw this.
He saw an opportunity.
A big one. Old's past, it was a weapon waiting to be used.
And with all that fear floating around.
Even a hint of communist association, it could be fatal.
Politically speaking, of course.
Exactly. And Johnson, always the pragmatist, saw a chance to eliminate an obstacle.
A potential obstacle to his own agenda, you mean?
And wouldn't you know it, he could curry favor with some powerful interests along the way.
Sounds like classic Johnson to me. So how did he make it happen? How did he bring Olds down?
Well, remember, he was on the Senate Commerce Committee.
Right.
He used that position to start these hearings.
Marketing Olds.
You got it. But these weren't just any hearings. Johnson, he was a master of procedure, right? He stacked the deck.
Against Olds.
You bet. The subcommittee members, all handpicked.
Staunch anti-communists, I imagine.
Every single one. And the witnesses he called.
Painted Olds in the worst possible light.
Like a carefully orchestrated play, almost.
It's almost scary how calculating he could be.
It makes you wonder, was there any truth to it?
The accusations against Olds, you mean?
Yeah, or was it all just a smear campaign?
A political hit job.
Well, Caro's pretty clear about this.
What does he say?
The evidence was flimsy at best. They took his old writings, decades old.
Cherry picking out of context.
Exactly. Twisted them to fit Johnson's narrative.
What about Olds? Didn't he try to fight back?
He did. He tried to explain, to say his views had changed.
That happens. People evolve, right?
But Johnson and his allies, they were relentless.
They had their story, and they weren't budging.
It really shows you how easily someone can be destroyed when politics takes over.
When it's more important than principle, yeah.
It's a sobering thought, for sure. So, what happened to Olds in the end?
Did he survive all this?
Not really. The Senate, swayed by all those attacks and the distorted evidence, they rejected his renomination to the FPC.
Career over.
Just like that. It was a big win for the oil and gas industry.
They saw him as a threat, right?
To their interests, yeah. And for Johnson, it was a show of force.
He was willing to do whatever it took to win.
It's a chilling story. Really shows the complexity of the man.
Idealistic, ruthless, all wrapped up in one.
Makes you wonder if it was a pattern for him.
Using these kinds of tactics, I mean...
Well, it wasn't an isolated incident.
You're saying this was Johnson's M.O.?
His maneuvering, it went beyond the Senate.
What do you mean?
He understood the media, how to use it to his advantage.
It wasn't just about mastering the Senate rules.
No, he was playing a bigger game, the PR game.
Interesting. And he was good at it.
Oh, he was a master. Remember, this was before the 24/7 news cycle, before the internet.
Newspapers and magazines, that was it.
That was the public forum. And Johnson, he knew how to work it.
Cultivate those relationships with journalists.
Shape the narrative, put his spin on things.
Sounds familiar, doesn't it?
It's a timeless game, really.
So, how did he do it? Give me an example of Johnson's media manipulation at work. You were saying how Johnson was great at shaping how the public saw things.
Yeah, and this was before the internet and all that.
How did he do that back then?
So there's this one example, the Senate Preparedness Subcommittee.
Preparedness Subcommittee.
It was tasked with investigating military preparedness, during the Korean War. And Johnson, well, he used it to generate positive press coverage.
But wasn't that a serious issue? The Korean War.
Oh, absolutely. And Johnson genuinely cared about the country.
Right.
But he also knew a good opportunity when he saw one.
To advance his own career.
You got it.
Yeah.
He knew the public wanted information during the war.
Reassurance, too, probably.
Exactly. And he used the subcommittee to do both.
Address those public needs and...
promote himself as a strong leader.
Pretty savvy.
So how did he turn this little subcommittee into a PR machine?
Yeah, how?
He flooded the media with reports, tons of them.
What kind of reports?
They weren't really groundbreaking, more like repackaged existing info.
To grab headlines, I bet.
You know it. He understood most people wouldn't read the whole thing.
Just skim the headlines, get the gist.
And that's how opinions are formed.
From a carefully crafted headline, wow.
Johnson was playing the long game.
It's all about perception, isn't it?
You said it. Control the information, emphasize the good stuff, downplay the bad.
And the press just went along with it.
More or less. It shows you how things worked back then.
And how some things never change.
It's a timeless story. The tools change, but the ambition, the power plays, it's all still there.
So Johnson, with his understanding of people, he really mastered this game.
He wasn't just a senator, he was a force of nature.
Reshaping the Senate and eventually, well,
The White House.
Caro's book really gives you a look behind the curtain, doesn't it?
It does, how power works, the good and the bad.
It's a story of ambition, compromise, and, the contradictions of Lyndon B. Johnson.
He was a complicated figure, that's for sure.
It makes you think, does the end justify the means?
It's a question we all have to grapple with, especially when it comes to leadership.
Well, we've only scratched the surface of this fascinating story.
There's so much more to explore in Caro's Master of the Senate.
We highly recommend it. It's a captivating read.
It really is.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of power and politics, be sure to subscribe.
We've got more fascinating stories to share, from history to politics to the human condition. There's a link to buy the book in the episode description. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and share it with anyone who loves exploring ideas. We'll be back soon with another fascinating topic. Until then, keep those minds curious and engaged.